I never thought I'd be the man who canceled his own wedding. The kind who found rock bottom through an iPad notification of all things. My name is Daniel Hendricks, and I'm 33 years old. Most mornings I'm here at this kitchen counter, checking emails while Otis waits for his breakfast. Anya Porter, my fiancée of 16 months, thought her Bachelorette weekend would remain private. Turns out shared cloud accounts don't respect what happens in Vegas rules. I saw every photo, every moment she turned our future into a punchline while strangers cheered. What stings isn't unfaithfulness. It's the calculated disrespect. My sister Mara told me I should have thrown things. Instead, I drafted emails, made calls, and reclaimed every dollar that had gone towards celebrating a lie. The ring is back with the jeweler now. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I woke with the sun that Tuesday morning, the way I always did. Henderson gets that perfect desert light, sharp and clear, like it's cutting through any bullshit left in your mind from sleep. My contractor business had trained me to be an early riser years ago, and even on my day off, my body clock didn't know the difference. Otis was still curled at the foot of the bed, his golden fur catching the light streaming through the blinds. He opened one eye, decided it wasn't worth getting up yet, and went back to sleep. Smart dog. "Just checking the catering stuff, buddy," I said, more to fill the quiet than anything else. "Then we'll go for that walk." The house was still, peaceful in that pre-coffee way that feels like the world is holding its breath. Anya wouldn't be back until afternoon. She'd stayed at her friend Tessa's after her Bachelorette weekend. Said she needed recovery time. I smiled at that, thinking she'd probably had too much champagne with the girls. Innocent thoughts. That's the thing about before and after moments. You don't know you're in one until it's too late. I padded barefoot into the kitchen, the tile cool against my soles. My engagement ring sat on the counter where I'd left it last night after washing dishes. $18,500 of promise, catching the morning light like it was winking at me. I slid it back on, the weight familiar now after almost a year and a half. The coffee maker gurgled to life while I grabbed the iPad from its charging station. We had exactly 39 days until the wedding, and the caterer needed final head counts and menu confirmations. Anya and I had set up a shared Apple ID just for wedding planning. Her idea, actually. More efficient that way, she'd said. I remember the bitter taste of that first sip of coffee. How normal it felt. How the world was still steady on its axis. The notification banner was small, innocuous even. 94 new photos added to album. Palmetto Suite weekend. I tapped it without thinking, expecting to see hotel conference rooms or venue details Anya might have scouted. The first thumbnail loaded. Anya in a white bride-to-be sash, champagne flute raised high, surrounded by her bridesmaids. Harmless enough. I swiped to the next one, then the next. Then I couldn't stop swiping. Anya straddling a shirtless dancer while her friends whooped in the background. Anya doing body shots off the same guy. Anya wearing a mock veil while simulating. My coffee went cold in my hand. The timestamps said Saturday night, 2 days ago. While I was helping my mother move her new couch into her living room, Anya was. I put the mug down before I dropped it. My hand had gone numb. It synced, I whispered to the empty kitchen. She didn't know it would sync. All those photos automatically uploading to our shared account. Technology doesn't understand privacy or shame. It just performs its function. Upload, sync, share. I sat down at the counter, scrolling back through. There were videos too. Short clips with bad audio, but clear enough. The dancer, a tall guy with tattoos covering his arms, grinding against my fiancée while her bridesmaids tossed dollar bills and screamed encouragement. Tessa's voice, clear, even over the music. "Your last chance, girl. Make it count." My last chance. That's what Anya was thinking of our relationship while mock marrying a stripper in a hotel suite. Her last chance at freedom. I must have sat there for 20 minutes, just staring, my thumb swiping mechanically through each new betrayal. It wasn't sex. She hadn't cheated in the traditional sense. But this public mockery? This was her laughing at me, at us, at everything we'd built. This was contempt dressed as celebration. Otis's claws clicked on the hardwood as he padded into the kitchen. He nudged my leg, whining softly, picking up on my mood the way dogs somehow always do. "It's over," I told him, my voice strange to my own ears. "Everything we planned. It's over." My hand hovered over the iPad. I could delete the photos. Pretend I never saw them. We could go on with the wedding, the house, the future we'd mapped out together. But some things, once seen, can't be unseen. Outside, I heard the distinctive purr of Anya's BMW pulling into the driveway. Then the soft slam of her car door, the jingle of her keys. The front door opened with that familiar squeak I'd been meaning to fix. Anya stepped in, balancing a coffee carrier in one hand and a glossy shopping bag in the other. Her cheeks were flushed from the morning heat, hair pulled back in that messy bun she wore when she wasn't trying to impress anyone. "Hey, babe," she called out, kicking the door closed behind her. "Got you a latte. And wait till you see these shoes I found for the ceremony. The heel height is perfect for the dress length." I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. My throat felt like I'd swallowed sand. She rounded the corner into the kitchen, freezing when she saw me sitting there, motionless, with Otis pressed against my leg. The smile slipped from her face. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting down the coffee and bag. "Did something happen?" I placed the iPad on the counter between us, screen up, and turned it to face her. "Anything you want to tell me?" I asked, my voice unnervingly calm even to my own ears. Her eyes flicked down to the screen, the frozen image of her sitting on the dancer's lap, surrounded by her laughing friends, and she went completely still. I tapped play on the slideshow. The images advanced automatically, 3 seconds each, like a metronome counting the death of everything we'd built. Anya's face drained of color. "Daniel, I particularly liked the part where you mock-married him," I said, keeping my tone level. "Really sets the tone for our actual wedding." She reached for the iPad, but I pulled it back. "It was just a joke," she said quickly. "Everyone does wild stuff at bachelorette parties." "It doesn't mean anything. You humiliated both of us," I said. "That's not wild. That's ugly." She crossed her arms defensively. "Don't exaggerate. You're acting like I cheated." "I don't need you to cheat to lose respect," I said, meeting her eyes directly. "You filmed yourself throwing it away." "God, seriously?" Her voice rose an octave. "It was a stupid party game. The girls were all doing it. Why are you even looking at those?" "That was private." "You synced it," I said, tapping the iPad screen. "You brought the proof to me." Anya's face hardened. "So that's it? You're going through my photos now? Checking up on me?" "They appeared on our shared account, the one you set up." I felt my jaw tightening. I didn't search for this. I didn't even have to look hard. It landed right in front of me while I was checking caterer emails. "You're being controlling," she snapped, grabbing her coffee. "It was a fucking bachelorette party. What did you expect?" "Basic respect," I answered. "Dignity. Some sign that marrying me isn't your last chance at freedom." Her eyes widened. "You're taking this completely out of context." "There is no context where this is acceptable," I said, sliding my finger across the screen to a particularly damning photo. "There is no universe where I watch you mock our marriage before it even happens and just smile through it." "You're being dramatic," she said, her voice rising. "It was one night of fun." "At my expense," I finished for her. "With an audience." She slammed her coffee cup down, liquid sloshing over the rim onto the marble countertop. "What do you want from me? To apologize for having fun? For letting loose a little?" "I want you to acknowledge what you did," I said. "I want you to understand that this isn't about fun. It's about respect." "Fine," she shouted. "I'm sorry your feelings are hurt." "Is that what you need to hear?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize the person standing in front of me. Maybe I never had. Slowly, deliberately, I slid the engagement ring off my finger and placed it on the counter between us. The small clink of metal on stone seemed to echo in the suddenly silent kitchen. "This was a promise built on respect," I said. "You broke that. The rest breaks with it." Anya stared at the ring, then at me. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious in my life," I said. "The engagement is over. The wedding is off." Her eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from sadness or fury. "You're throwing away everything over one stupid night?" "No," I said quietly. "You did that. I'm just acknowledging it." Without another word, she grabbed the shopping bag with the bridal shoes and stormed down the hallway toward the guest room. The door slammed so hard the framed photo of us in Sedona fell off the wall. I sat motionless at the counter, staring at the ring. $18,500 of broken promises glinting in the late morning sun. I picked up my phone and sent the same text to both Mara and Noah. "Need to talk. Wedding's off. Can you come by tomorrow morning? Then I turned off my phone, picked up Otis's leash, and walked him around the block 3 times until my legs ached as much as my chest. When darkness fell, I was still sitting at the kitchen counter, the ring untouched, drafting an email to Ruth Delgado that began, "I need legal advice regarding a canceled engagement and shared assets." The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. The sun hadn't even risen yet, but sleep had been impossible anyway. I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, running through every scenario of how this day might unfold. Otis nudged my hand with his nose as I made coffee. At least someone's routine wasn't shattered. "Just you and me now, buddy," I said, scratching behind his ears. The doorbell rang at 9:15. Mara stood on the doorstep, her auburn hair tied back in a no-nonsense ponytail, eyes already searching my face for damage. "You look like hell," she said, pulling me into a quick hug. "Thanks. Love you too." She stepped inside, hanging her jacket by the door. "Mom's parking. She's bringing the financial folder." "Of course she is." I managed a weak smile. "Leave it to Elaine Hendricks, retired accountant, to arrive armed with documentation." Mara grabbed my arm. "Are you sure about this? We could just let the lawyers handle it." "No," I said firmly. "I need to look them all in the eye. I need them to see what happened." Mom arrived 5 minutes later, carrying a leather portfolio that looked like it contained tax returns for a small country. She kissed my cheek without a word, then went straight to the dining table and started arranging papers. "I pulled everything," she said, opening the folder. "Wedding venue contract, catering deposit slips, ring appraisal, property deed. All in your name." "Thanks, Mom." "Daniel," she paused, looking up at me over her reading glasses. "Are you certain?" I nodded. "You'll understand when you see it." The Porter family arrived 20 minutes late. I watched from the kitchen window as they pulled up in Frank's oversized SUV. Caroline exited first, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Frank followed, his face already set in a defensive scowl. Anya was last, wearing sunglasses despite the cloudy day. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and opened it. "Daniel," Caroline said, her voice artificially warm. "I hope we can sort this little misunderstanding." I stepped aside to let them in. "It's not a misunderstanding." Frank moved past me without a greeting, scanning the room like he was assessing property value. Anya kept her eyes on the floor. "Well," Frank said, settling himself at the head of my dining table, "let's get this straightened out quickly. We've all got busy days ahead." I remained standing. Mara positioned herself beside me, arms crossed, while Mom sat across from Caroline with the open folder in front of her. "There's nothing to straighten out," I said evenly. "The wedding is off." Frank waved his hand dismissively. "Look, son, I understand you're upset. But this is how these things go. Bachelor parties, bachelorette weekends, everyone blows off steam before settling down." "It wasn't about blowing off steam," I said, reaching for the iPad on the counter. "It was about public humiliation." I unlocked the screen and slid it across the table toward them. This is what I found on our shared account. From Anya's "No Phones Allowed" weekend. Caroline leaned forward first, her expression shifting from confusion to shock as she swiped through the photos. Frank's face reddened. Anya stared at her hands. "That's not cheating," Caroline finally muttered, pushing the iPad away. "No," I agreed. "It's betrayal in high definition." Frank cleared his throat. "Every bride gets a little wild at these things. It's tradition." "Mocking your future husband isn't tradition," Mara cut in, her voice sharp. "That's public humiliation disguised as fun." I looked directly at Anya, who still hadn't spoken. "The wedding is canceled. The ring gets returned. You'll vacate my condo by Friday." Her head snapped up. "You can't just end it over a party." "You ended it when you turned me into a punchline," I replied. "This is ridiculous." Frank slammed his palm on the table. "We've already paid deposits. The invitations are out. You're contractually obligated." "Actually, he's not," Mom interjected, sliding a document forward. "The venue contract has a cancellation clause. The ring is Daniel's property until the wedding ceremony, according to Nevada law, and the condo is solely in his name." Frank's face darkened. "We'll see what a judge has to say about that." "You're welcome to try," came a voice from my laptop. I'd positioned it at the end of the table, and Ruth Delgado's composed face filled the screen. "But Mr. Hendricks is within his legal rights on all counts." "Who the hell is this?" Frank demanded. "Ruth Delgado, attorney at law," she replied calmly. "I've reviewed all documents related to this case." Caroline turned to Anya. "Say something. Tell them it wasn't how it looked." Anya's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, fingers flying across the screen beneath the table. "It was just stupid fun," she finally said, her voice small. "It didn't mean anything." "That's the problem," I replied. "Our relationship didn't mean enough for you to protect it." The doorbell rang again. Mara answered it, returning with Tessa, Anya's maid of honor, looking uncomfortable in last night's outfit. "Sorry I'm late," she mumbled, sliding into the chair beside Anya. "Tessa was there," I said. "She can confirm everything in those photos." All eyes turned to her. She withered under the collective gaze. "It was just a party," she began weakly. "Everyone was drinking and laughing at my expense," I finished. "With strangers." Anya's phone vibrated again on the table. I caught a glimpse of the notification. Plan B. Later that afternoon, I sat at my desk going through our wedding expenses. The statement for our joint account loaded on my laptop screen, and something caught my eye. 2 charges from Bridal Elegance, $1,050 and $1,250, processed just this morning. Nearly $3,000 in dresses after our confrontation. My jaw tightened. I grabbed my phone and called the bank. "I need to freeze a joint account immediately," I told the representative. I provided the necessary information, listening to the soft clicks of her keyboard. "May I ask the reason for the freeze, Mr. Hendricks?" "Unauthorized purchases following a relationship termination," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I understand. The account has been frozen effective immediately. No further transactions will process until further notice." I thanked her and ended the call, then immediately dialed Ruth. "She charged almost $3,000 in dresses after I told her the wedding was off," I explained when Ruth answered. "Did you officially end the engagement before these charges were made?" Ruth asked. "Yes. Verbally yesterday, and in writing during the family meeting this morning." "Then you're within your rights," Ruth confirmed. "It's reasonable to protect joint assets once an engagement is terminated, especially if there's evidence of frivolous spending." After hanging up, I opened my wedding planning folder. Time to dismantle what we'd built. I called the venue first. "Henderson Terrace Events. This is Melissa." "Hi, Melissa. This is Daniel Hendricks. I need to cancel our June 12th wedding reservation." Silence for a moment. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Hendricks. May I ask why?" I kept it simple. "The engagement has ended." She walked me through the cancellation policy. I'd lose the initial deposit, but could recover 60% of the remaining balance if canceled more than 90 days out. It was painful, but fair. Next was the caterer. Similar conversation, similar outcome, partial refund coming my way in 10 business days. The photographer, Andrew, was different. I'd chosen him because I liked his honest portfolio and straightforward approach. When I explained the situation, he sighed. "Man, I'm sorry that happened to you," he said. "Look, I haven't turned down any other bookings for your date yet, so I'll refund your deposit in full. No need to make this harder than it already is." "You don't have to do that," I said, surprised. "Yeah, I do," he replied. "There's enough sharks out there. Some of us still believe in doing the right thing when someone's going through hell." I remembered why I'd wanted him to capture our day in the first place. Some people still operated on decency. By early evening, I'd contacted everyone on the list. The relief I felt wasn't about money. It was about taking back control. I closed my laptop and went to the kitchen to make dinner. I was chopping vegetables when I heard the guest room door slam open. Anya stormed into the kitchen, her face flushed. "What did you do to our accounts?" she demanded. I set the knife down. "I froze the joint account after I saw you charged $3,000 in dresses this morning." "How dare you?" She thrust her phone in my face. "My cards are declined everywhere. You have no right to cut me off like this." "Those were wedding expenses," I replied calmly. "There is no wedding." "This is financial abuse." Her voice rose sharply. "I'll make sure everyone knows what you're really like. You think you're so perfect, so righteous. Wait until I tell people what you're doing." I nodded toward the table. "There's a vacate notice there. You have until Friday to move out. Ruth drew it up this morning." Anya grabbed it, scanning the document with widening eyes. "You can't be serious." "Completely serious." She snatched a glass from the counter and hurled it against the wall. It shattered, sending shards across the floor. Otis yelped from his bed in the corner, tucking his tail between his legs. I watched her for a moment, then grabbed the broom and dustpan from the pantry. "Real mature," I said, sweeping up the broken glass while Otis cowered. "Feel better now?" "You're a controlling asshole," she spat. "I can't believe I almost married you." "That makes 2 of us," I replied, continuing to clean up her mess. She stormed back to the guest room, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frames on the wall. An hour later, Mara and Noah arrived with takeout. The three of us sat at the kitchen table while I recounted the day's events. "You did good, bro," Noah said, passing me another beer. "Clean break by the book." Mara nodded. "Let's secure everything else. Passwords, accounts, valuables, anything she might try to access." We spent the next 2 hours changing passwords on streaming services, cloud accounts, and anything else we could think of. Noah helped me move my important documents and the few family heirlooms I had into my office. I locked the drawer containing my grandfather's watch and my dad's old service medals, feeling a heaviness in my chest that had nothing to do with the items inside. 2 days later, I found myself sitting across from Ruth Delgado at her downtown office. The place smelled like leather and old books, with a view of the courthouse that seemed appropriate for the situation. She wore a navy pantsuit and had the calm demeanor of someone who'd seen every variation of human drama. "The vacate agreement is straightforward," she explained, sliding the document toward me. "It establishes that she has no ownership claim to the property, confirms the voluntary return of the engagement ring, and provides a formal timeline for her departure." I scanned the pages. "And this is legally binding?" "Absolutely. Once signed, she has 48 hours to remove her belongings and surrender all keys." Ruth tapped her pen on another document. "I've also drafted this ring agreement. Since Nevada considers engagement rings conditional gifts, she's legally obligated to return it." The afternoon sun caught the edge of Ruth's desk, reminding me of all the evenings Anya and I had spent planning our future. Dinners where we discussed centerpieces and honeymoon destinations over candlelight, her excitement making her eyes sparkle. It felt like memories from someone else's life now. "What if she refuses to sign?" I asked. "Then we proceed to small claims court, but that would cost her more in legal fees than it's worth." Ruth's expression softened slightly. "Most people choose the path of least resistance when they realize they have no legitimate claim." I nodded, gathering the papers. "Thank you. I'll bring these tonight." "Document everything," she advised as I stood to leave. "Every conversation, every text. If she tries anything impulsive, we'll need the evidence." On the drive home, my phone rang through the car speakers. Noah's name flashed on the display. "Heads up," he said without preamble. "Anya's parents just called my sister. They're demanding another meeting tonight." I sighed. Of course they are. Apparently, Anya called her mom sobbing that you've destroyed her life. "Caroline's on the warpath. Tell your sister thanks for the warning," I replied. "I'll handle it." By 7 that evening, both families were back in my living room. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Caroline and Frank sat rigid on the couch, while Anya perched beside them, eyes red-rimmed but defiant. My mom and Mara took positions flanking me like sentinels. "I appreciate you coming," I began, placing Ruth's documents on the coffee table. "I wanted to clarify the timeline for resolving our shared financial matters." "Timeline?" Frank interrupted. "You're talking like this is a business transaction instead of my daughter's life." "It is a transaction at this point," I replied evenly. "The venue has agreed to refund 60% of our payment. The caterer is returning half the deposit. The honeymoon booking is non-refundable, but I've accepted that loss." Caroline leaned forward. "Daniel, please. This humiliation isn't necessary. Every couple has rough patches." "This isn't a rough patch," my mother interjected. "This is a fundamental breach of respect." Frank's face reddened. "Your son is publicly humiliating our daughter by canceling everything without discussion." "Your daughter humiliated herself," Mom replied coolly. "And my son paid for everything you're discussing." I raised my hand slightly. "I'm not interested in blame or arguments. I've made my decision." I slid Ruth's documents forward. "This vacate agreement confirms Anya will move out by Friday. This second form acknowledges the return of the engagement ring." Anya's eyes narrowed. "And if I refuse?" "Then we go to court," I said simply. "Ruth is prepared to file first thing Monday." Caroline placed her hand on Anya's arm. "Sweetheart, maybe we should—" "I can't believe you're taking his side," Anya snapped. "I'm trying to protect you from wasting money on a legal battle you'll lose," Caroline whispered. I pulled out a folder containing copies of all my receipts: the ring purchase, the venue contract, the property deed. I laid them out methodically, proof of ownership for everything in question. The room fell silent as they examined the evidence. Finally, Frank exhaled sharply. "Let me see those papers." He reviewed them with Caroline, murmuring quietly. After a few minutes, he handed them to Anya. "Sign them," he said gruffly. We'll talk about next steps at home. Anya's hand trembled as she signed both documents. She reached into her purse and withdrew my grandmother's ring, placing it on the table with deliberate slowness. I hope you're satisfied, she said, voice brittle. I watched as she slid her house keys across the table. The small metallic sound seemed to mark the end of something significant. For the first time in days, I felt a hint of peace breaking through the chaos. After they left, I fed Otis, who had wisely remained in the bedroom during the entire confrontation. He wagged his tail cautiously as I filled his bowl. Finally done, boy, I said, scratching behind his ears. It's just us again. I didn't notice Anya's final text as I shut off my phone for the night. Legal aid, urgent. Can meet tomorrow morning at 8. Bring documentation. I woke to thunderous knocking. My first thought was that the building was on fire. That urgent, demanding rhythm couldn't be anything else. Otis barked frantically from the foot of the bed. Coming, I called, stumbling toward the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt. The peephole revealed 2 uniformed sheriff's deputies standing in the dim morning light. My stomach dropped. I'd never had law enforcement at my door before. Daniel Hendricks? The taller officer asked when I opened up. Yes, that's me. My voice sounded far away, even to myself. We're here to serve you with this temporary protective order. He handed me a stack of papers. You need to vacate these premises immediately and remain at least 500 feet from Anya Porter. I stared at the documents, struggling to process what was happening. I don't understand. She already agreed to move out. I have papers she signed yesterday. Sir, this is a court order alleging domestic intimidation. You have 1 hour to gather essential belongings and vacate. Ms. Porter alleges you blocked her exit from this residence and made threats to destroy her property. The second deputy added, We can wait while you gather some things. My hands felt numb as I flipped through the pages. There it was in black and white. Anya claimed I'd cornered her in the hallway, prevented her from leaving, and threatened to destroy her possessions if she didn't sign the agreement. Complete fiction. I wasn't even here when she says this happened, I said. I was at my attorney's office yesterday afternoon. You'll have an opportunity to present that evidence at the hearing, the first deputy said. For now, you need to comply with the order. I nodded slowly. Can I make a phone call first? Go ahead. I called Ruth while gathering clothes. Her voice was sharp and clear despite the early hour. Don't argue with them, she instructed. Pack what you need for a few days. We'll have this dismissed at the hearing, but fighting now will only complicate things. I moved methodically through the condo, packing a duffel bag with clothes, toiletries, and my laptop. I grabbed Otis's food, his leash, and his bed. The deputies watched silently from the doorway. I need my work documents, I said, gesturing toward my office. Go ahead. I collected the files from my desk drawer, along with the folder containing all the wedding cancellation receipts. As I passed the kitchen, I paused to take my grandmother's ring from the counter where I'd left it after last night's meeting. Sir, we need to wrap this up, the shorter deputy reminded me. Just one more thing. I pulled out my phone and took photos of the vacate agreement Anya had signed, still sitting on the coffee table. The deputies exchanged glances, but didn't stop me. Outside, I loaded everything into my truck. Otis jumped into the passenger seat, his eyes anxious and confused. It's okay, boy, I said softly, scratching his ear. We're taking a little trip. I called Noah as I pulled away from the condo, watching the deputies in my rearview mirror. She filed a restraining order, I said when he answered. I need a place to crash. Jesus, Noah muttered. Come over. Door's open. Noah's house was quiet when I arrived. He took one look at my face and wordlessly handed me a cup of coffee. She's claiming I trapped her in the hallway and threatened her, I explained, setting my duffel down. Yesterday afternoon, when I was literally sitting in Ruth's office across town. That's insane, Noah said. You have proof, right? Ruth's office has security cameras, and I paid for lunch with my credit card at 2:30, right when she claims this happened. I unfolded the couch into a bed and set up Otis's things in the corner. He circled his bed 3 times before settling down with a heavy sigh. Even he could feel something was wrong. That evening, after a day of calls with Ruth planning our court response, the doorbell rang. Noah answered while I stayed on the couch, going through emails. You've got a visitor, Noah said, his tone warning me something was off. I looked up to see Tyler, the dancer from Anya's photos, swaying in the doorway. His eyes were bloodshot, his breath reeking of alcohol. Ruined her life, he slurred, pointing an unsteady finger at me. It was just a gig, man. Just a stupid party. I stood slowly. Tyler, right? You need to leave. She lost everything because of you, he continued, stepping into the house despite Noah's attempt to block him. Her apartment? Her money? That was her choice, I said calmly. This doesn't involve you. She's staying with Kay now, working doubles to cover the bills her parents won't pay. He moved closer, his face flushed. All because you couldn't handle a joke. Go home, Tyler, I said firmly. You're drunk. Make me, he challenged, then suddenly shoved me hard in the chest. I stumbled back but caught myself, refusing to raise my hands. Noah immediately stepped between us. That's enough, Noah said. I'm calling the cops. Tyler laughed bitterly. Yeah, call them. I'll tell them what kind of control freak you are. Noah pulled out his phone and dialed 911, keeping himself between Tyler and me. Tyler paced the living room, knocking a lamp off the side table. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, they found Tyler sitting on Noah's front lawn, still ranting. They questioned each of us separately, then put Tyler in handcuffs. A public intoxication and trespassing, the officer explained. We can hold him overnight. I recorded everything on my phone, the damage to Noah's lamp, the statement I gave to the officers, Tyler being escorted to the patrol car. As the police lights disappeared down the street, I sat on the curb, exhaustion washing over me. What had started as betrayal had escalated into something uglier, something that felt like warfare. You okay? Noah asked, sitting beside me. I nodded slowly. If she wants court, she'll get truth. 2 days later, I stood outside the county courthouse, straightening my tie for the third time. The morning air felt crisp against my face, a welcome change from the stuffiness of Noah's guest room and the heaviness that had settled in my chest since the deputy's knock. Ruth Delgado arrived right on time, briefcase in hand, her heels clicking confidently against the concrete. She wore a charcoal pantsuit that meant business. Ready? She asked, her expression serious but reassuring. As I'll ever be, I replied, following her up the steps. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as we made our way to courtroom C. My stomach tightened when I saw them already seated on the other side, Anya in a cream-colored blouse that made her look innocent, Caroline with her pearls and disapproving stare, and Frank, whose face had turned an interesting shade of red the moment I walked in. Ruth and I settled at our table. The wood felt cool beneath my palms as I placed my hands flat against it, focusing on staying calm. I refused to look at Anya directly, though I could feel her eyes on me. All rise, the bailiff announced as Judge Mercer entered, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a reputation for cutting through drama. Once seated, he reviewed the file before him, eyes darting between papers with practiced efficiency. Temporary protective order review, Porter versus Hendricks, he stated. I'll hear from the petitioner first. Anya's attorney, a young guy who looked fresh out of law school, rose and began spinning a tale about my escalating behavior and intimidation tactics. He described how I supposedly blocked Anya in the hallway, threatening to destroy her belongings if she didn't sign the vacate agreement. I clenched my jaw but kept my expression neutral. The lies stung, even though I'd expected them. When our turn came, Ruth stood with the calm confidence that had made me hire her in the first place. Your Honor, we have conclusive evidence that Mr. Hendricks was not present at the residence during the alleged incident. She presented my credit card statement showing lunch purchased at a restaurant 15 miles from the condo at exactly 2:37 p.m., the precise time Anya claimed I had her trapped in the hallway. Ruth then displayed security footage from her office building showing me in her conference room from 1:45 to 3:20 p.m. As you can see, Mr. Hendricks was physically unable to commit the acts Ms. Porter has alleged. Next came the Ring doorbell footage from the condo, showing me leaving that morning and not returning until evening, with timestamps that couldn't be altered. Furthermore, Ruth continued, we have the voluntary vacate agreement signed by Ms. Porter in the presence of both families. She presented the document, pointing out the signatures of Caroline and Frank as witnesses. This was signed during a civil meeting, not under duress. Judge Mercer studied each piece of evidence, occasionally glancing over at Anya, whose rehearsed distress was beginning to crack under the weight of facts. She twisted a tissue between her fingers, but her eyes remained dry. Ms. Porter, the judge said finally, do you maintain that Mr. Hendricks threatened you on the date in question, despite this evidence placing him elsewhere? Anya hesitated, glancing at her mother, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. I might have mixed up the dates, she murmured. The judge's expression hardened. This court doesn't appreciate having its time wasted with false allegations. The temporary order is dissolved, effective immediately. He tapped his gavel once. Court costs will be assigned to the petitioner. Relief flooded through me, but I kept my face neutral. This wasn't a victory to celebrate, just an injustice corrected. As we gathered our things, I caught Frank muttering to Caroline about public embarrassment and damage control. Caroline's glare could have frozen fire. Outside in the courthouse hallway, Ruth shook my hand. "I need to file these documents. Meet you at the car in 15?" I nodded, and she disappeared down the corridor, leaving me alone when Anya approached. Her eyes were red-rimmed now, real tears, perhaps from humiliation rather than remorse. "Daniel," she said softly, reaching for my arm. "Please, we can still fix this." I stepped back, maintaining distance between us. "No, we can't." "It was just one stupid night," she insisted. "You're throwing away 3 years over one night." I looked at her directly for the first time that day. "No, you broke trust. That's the foundation. There's nothing left to fix." "But I love you," she whispered. "Love without respect isn't love at all," I replied, my voice quiet but firm. "It's just need." Without another word, I turned and walked away. I didn't look back, not even when I heard Caroline call my name sharply from down the hall. That evening I sat in my car outside the condo, key in hand, but not yet in the ignition. The windows of what was once our shared home glowed softly in the growing darkness. My phone buzzed with a missed call notification from Ruth, something about financial restitution. I stared at the building, realizing that peace wasn't the same as victory. Peace was quieter, more personal. It wasn't about winning against Anya. It was about reclaiming what was mine, my home, my dignity, my future. I returned Ruth's call as soon as I got home. Otis was circling my legs, his nails clicking against the hardwood floor, happy to be back in familiar territory. "Daniel, good news," Ruth said when she answered. "We can file a small claims action against Ms. Porter for breach of promise and reimbursement of your legal fees." "Is it worth it?" I asked, dropping my keys on the counter and giving Otis a scratch behind the ears. "I just want this finished." "It's absolutely worth it," Ruth replied, confidence flowing through her voice. "Nevada recognizes breach of promise cases, especially with the evidence we have. Her behavior not only broke the engagement under circumstances that were entirely her fault, but her false accusations cost you additional legal expenses." I sighed, remembering those nights on Noah's couch while locked out of my own home. "Let's do it then." "What do we need?" Ruth walked me through the documentation, receipts for the attorney fees, the court costs I'd already paid, and a calculation of lost work hours. We'd file on Thursday. But Wednesday morning my phone rang. Frank Porter's name flashed across the screen. "Mr. Hendricks," he said, his voice lacking its usual bluster. "I understand you're planning to file against my daughter." "News travels fast," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "I'd like to handle this privately," he said. "Name your figure." "It's not about a figure, Mr. Porter. It's about restitution. Full reimbursement of my legal expenses and court costs. Nothing more, nothing less." There was a long pause. "Fine," he finally said. "We can meet at your attorney's office tomorrow. 3 o'clock, I told him. "Ruth will expect you." The next day, I arrived early at Ruth's office. The waiting room had that particular law firm smell: leather chairs, coffee, and paper. Ruth greeted me with a firm handshake. "He'll try to negotiate down," she warned. "Stay firm." "I know exactly what I want," I assured her. Frank arrived 5 minutes late, wearing an expensive suit that seemed to hang heavier on his frame than the last time I'd seen him. There were no pleasantries, just a curt nod as Ruth showed us into her conference room. "I have the amount here," Ruth said, sliding a document across the table. $7,422. This covers Mr. Hendricks' legal fees, court costs, and the documented loss of business revenue during the days he was forced to vacate his residence. Frank glanced at the paper but didn't pick it up. "That's steep for what amounted to a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding that involved filing false legal claims against my client," Ruth countered smoothly. "We're prepared to file in small claims today, if necessary." Frank's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he might argue, but then he reached inside his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. "Cashier's check," he said, placing it on the table. "For the full amount." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. This wasn't about money, it was about accountability. Ruth verified the check and prepared a settlement agreement, which we both signed. The whole process took less than 30 minutes. As we stood to leave, Frank finally looked directly at me. "This concludes our business, Mr. Hendricks," he said, but the usual arrogance was missing from his voice. There was something else there, not quite regret, but perhaps a grudging respect. "Yes, it does," I replied simply. 3 days later, with all contracts officially closed, I found myself driving to the coffee shop where Tessa worked. I hadn't planned this confrontation, but I needed it. One more piece to set right. She saw me as soon as I walked in, her eyes widening with recognition and something like shame. "Daniel," she said quietly when I approached the counter, "what can I get you?" "Just a minute of your time," I replied. She glanced at her coworker, who nodded and took over the register. Tessa came around to where I stood. "I'm sorry," she blurted before I could speak. "I should have said something that night, or at least afterward." "But you didn't," I said, keeping my voice low. "You were there. You saw everything and you said nothing." "We all thought it was just harmless fun," she stammered. "Nobody meant to hurt you." I looked at her directly. "You laughed while I was being erased. That makes you part of it." Tessa's face flushed, and she stared down at her hands. "You're right," she whispered. "I can't change what happened, but I really am sorry." I nodded, accepting her apology without absolving her. There was nothing more to say. That evening, I stood outside on my balcony, the final check deposited, all paperwork complete. The desert air was cooling as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I could hear Otis moving around inside, his collar jingling softly. The soft hum of freedom was returning to my life, one day at a time. But I knew there was one last obligation before I could truly move forward. I needed to see Anya face to face, one final time to end this permanently. A week after the settlement, I saw Anya's name flash on my phone. I almost didn't answer, but something told me this was necessary. "I have some of your things," she said, her voice flat. "Tools, mostly. Some old photos." "You can drop them at the door," I replied. "I don't need to be there." "I'd rather hand them over properly," she insisted. "Clean break." I hesitated, weighing the risks against the need for final closure. "Tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Don't bring anyone." "I won't," she promised. The next day at exactly 5, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Anya standing alone with a cardboard box in her arms. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face bare of makeup, nothing like the polished image she'd maintained throughout our relationship. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. "These are yours," she said, holding out the box. I took it, our fingers not touching in the exchange. "Thanks." We stood in awkward silence, the weight of 3 years together and 2 months apart hanging between us. Otis appeared at my side, but didn't wag his tail or approach her as he once would have. "You look good," she said finally. "I'm doing better," I answered honestly. She nodded, glancing past me into the condo we'd once shared. I could see her noticing the changes, the new kitchen island I'd started building, the rearranged furniture. "Why did you do it?" I asked suddenly, the question that had burned inside me since that first morning with the iPad. "Not just the photos, but everything after." Anya shrugged, a gesture so casual it almost sparked my anger again. "I wanted one last wild night before settling down." She paused. "When you found out, I panicked. I thought I could fix it, or at least save face." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone I no longer recognized. Maybe I never had. "You wanted a different life," I said quietly. "Now you have it." Something flickered across her face, regret, perhaps, or just acknowledgement of the truth. She nodded once, then turned and walked toward her car without looking back. I closed the door, feeling a strange sense of lightness I hadn't expected. Inside, I set the box on the coffee table and began unpacking. My old socket wrench set that had gone missing months ago. 3 framed photos of us that I'd forgotten existed. At the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, was Otis's first collar, the small blue one he'd outgrown years ago. I ran my thumb over the faded tag, remembering the day I'd adopted him. "Look what came back to us, buddy," I said, holding it out for him to sniff. Otis wagged his tail cautiously, then wandered back to his bed by the window. I placed everything in the drawer of my desk, not hidden away, just neatly stored where they belonged, the past, properly filed. Over the next several weeks, I threw myself into renovating the kitchen. The refunded wedding deposits had given me enough to replace the countertops and install new cabinets. Each day of work felt like reclaiming another piece of my space. When the renovation was complete, I took Mom and Mara out to dinner at Cardini's, the restaurant where we'd planned to have the rehearsal dinner. As we clinked glasses, Mom squeezed my hand. "You know what I'm proudest of?" she said. "You didn't let bitterness win." "I had good examples," I replied, smiling at both of them. The following Saturday, Noah came over with a six-pack and ordered pizza. We sat on my newly finished deck, watching the sunset over the Henderson skyline. "To freedom," Noah said, raising his bottle. "To knowing your worth," I countered, tapping my bottle against his. We talked about his new construction project, my business expansion plans, everything except Anya. But as the night wound down, he mentioned hearing that she and Kay were renting a small apartment together. "Apparently she's working double shifts to cover all the debts her parents refused to pay," he said. "And that dancer guy? Back to Vegas gigs. Nobody even remembers who he is." I nodded, surprised to find I felt no satisfaction at their struggles, just a distant acknowledgement that consequences follow choices. After Noah left, I stood on my deck alone, taking in the quiet. 6 months ago, I thought I knew exactly what my future held. Now, that future was unwritten, and somehow, that felt like freedom. If you're watching this and wondering if you'll ever get past your own betrayal, I want you to know something. Closure doesn't come from revenge. It comes from the peace you earn after the chaos, from standing in your truth when others try to rewrite it, from building something new after the foundation crumbles. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. Sometimes it simply walks away, head held high, toward a better life you build with your own two hands. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.